So my name is Kyle Campos. I am the VP of Continuous Delivery at Smarsh. We're a communications archiving company for regulated industries. So the friendly big brother before the angry one comes after you. Before this, I was at a large insurance company. So these stories come from both immature and mature ITIL processes. So regardless of the size of your company, I'm sure you can relate to painful change management. So let's dive in. Let's just settle on the definition here of when I'm talking about ITSM change management stuff. Let's take it straight from the book. So the goal of change management process is to ensure that standardized methods and procedures are used for efficient and prompt handling of all changes in order to minimize the impact of change-related incidents upon service quality and consequently improve the day-to-day operations of the organization. So if you take that definition at face value and focus on the outcomes, there's not much objectionable to it, right? You're like, I can align to that. The problems start to come when you ask, well, what do you mean by efficient? And what do you mean by prompt, right? Those words don't seem to align with what the reality is happening with ITSM. So let's tear it down to parts of that definition, first with the standardized methods and procedures. So in ITSM, the old paradigm, it's expressed through documentation, right? It's the form its expression takes. The ownership is governance boards, and who doesn't love ever-expanding governance boards for velocity? The focus is on the lowest or slowest common denominator. It has to incorporate every aspect of the organization and whatever their maturity level is, right? It has to comprehend that. It's measured by compliance, sort of binary, are you doing what we say, are you not? I'm going to use some engineering speak here around smells and fruits. So you can smell that you're in a particular level of ITSM hell if accountability is more important than determinism, right? So as you'll hear the phrase throat to choke, as long as there's someone that is putting their name on the line, really nothing else matters, right? Delivery is slowing over time. Regardless of what your application or product you're shipping is, there's just a gradual degradation of velocity. Meetings and human gates increase over time. So because of the ownership model, as you deploy more apps, those teams have to grow. The processes have to expand. And velocity is obfuscated. If you go inside of any of those processes and ask, like, what's our real delivery lead time? There's no, unless you're going to go through some Jira farm of tickets and try to extract that data, it's just who knows. It's long, we know that. In the new paradigms, in continuous delivery paradigm, expression is code. The ownership should be in the hands of delivery teams. The focus is acceleration. We measure by performance. The fruits of this is that determinism is more important than accountability, right? So we know it's getting through our gates because process A was green, and we know it's not getting through its gates because process B went red. There's only two options there. You either pass or fail. It's not up to somebody's gut instinct or to somebody's emotional whim, somebody's fear about the pain that happened last time, or the political atmosphere around who's leading your application or whatever. And delivery should quicken over time, because as you learn about the things that went bad in that process, you're updating your pipelines and continuous delivery patterns to address them. So pipeline should increase, human gates should decrease over time. And velocity is clarified. Right now, the velocity is really deterministic. Well, entered the pipeline at midnight, exited into production at 1 a.m., right? Let's take a look at efficient and prompt. So the aim is in ITSM is always process refinement. So you get like, okay, we understand your frustration. Let's refine the process. Let's get another person whose specialized task is this one question that we're having trouble answering. The vehicle through that is always training, right? We need to get people in huge conference rooms with some consultants to teach us about change management. Measurement is traceability, so that as long as you know each turn, people are fine. It doesn't matter how much wasted effort is involved with each turn, as long as it's known and visible, ITSM is happy. So the smells here is traceability first, and then when you get in this posture, the process is gamed to gain efficiency, right? You got something important, you find a way around. You're like, okay, well, can we keep this change window open for a week and I can get through a bunch of things? Like, sure, why not? I mean, there's nothing explicitly against that, I guess, you know? And so you have to game the system to get what everybody knows they really want is velocity. And there's super high tolerance for wasted effort, right? There's not even really an honest attempt to evaluate what wasted effort is. The teams grow, you know, inefficiency is all over the place, but it doesn't seem to bother too many. You get a ton of specialized workforce, right? They know this one column of the process, this one, you know, the workflow comes to me and I say yes or no to this, or I start the meetings where somebody else says yes or no. In the new paradigm, the aim is software delivery performance. That's what our eyes are fixed on. The vehicle to get there is through automation. We measure through delivery KPIs. And the fruits here is that repeatability comes first. Great, you did it once. Is this the way we're doing it every time? You have some code to check in to refine that process. And then in this world, the pipeline or the process is the most efficient way. You couldn't game it to get any faster, right? So when you're struggling between these worlds and when you're kind of a foot in each, you'll see engineers come over with some of the hangover from the previous and like, well, can't we just skip this part of the process or can't like turn off those tests or something? And you're like, no, this is the most efficient way to get to production. Let it enter the pipeline. Trust the process in this regard. And there's a low tolerance for wasted effort. Whenever you have to get inside that pipeline and do something to get something to product, it sticks out like a sore thumb, right? It's identified as debt. And the team owns this pipeline. I think it's really important that this isn't specialized workforce. Your app dev, DevOps, whatever that team makeup is, they own the delivery and the prod. They're the people with the closest to that code. They're the ones that wrote it. They're the ones that operate it. They know best. Certainly change, I think, regardless of our opinions, I think we could all agree, change management boards know the least about what is about to go into production. And having them with the buttons is ill-conceived, I think. So the illusion we're under here with ITSM is that there's safety in complexity. The more complex we make it, we feel better about ourselves, right? Like that's really hard to get into production. It must be safe, right? And that approval means accountability, so the more the merrier. I think Dormain just tweeted out today something about somebody shared like 70-something approvals for a particular change. Seems about right, and that was probably just to get Adobe Reader updated on people's laptops, I presume. It's probably not even an application deployment. The other illusion is that fast is reckless, so the slower we make things, the more responsible we are, right? So they're like, can't go fast, that seems crazy, so the slower we go, the more grown-up we are. But the reality is that that's wrong. It's dead wrong, and now we have data that proves just how wrong that is. I'm so happy. And it's not that I'm expecting an apology from everyone who said I was crazy the last time I gave this talk, but you can send your apologies at your earliest convenience. So the data that is in, this was like an early Christmas gift to me. We found, here, a quote from a wonderful book, Accelerate. We found that external approvals were negatively correlated with lead time, deployment frequency, and restore time, had no correlation with change fail rate. In short, approval by an external body such as a manager or CAB simply doesn't work to increase the stability of production systems. However, it certainly slows things down. It is, in fact, worse than having no change approval process at all. I know, let's celebrate. Last time I gave this talk, I was pleading with people to believe me, and then this comes along, so now we're just celebrating together. All right, so here's a little illustration of what the change management process looks like and why it's untenable for continuous delivery. So let's imagine way back in the distance where our first code commit, we got to navigate this road up to the top to get things into production. So the first turn, get your code in. Then we got a little turn at CI. We got to open a change request. We got some change approval. We got to open a change window. Then we do the change, and then we validate the change, and then we have a moment of congratulations as we finally got our code into our dev environment. And now you're like, okay, now I got to repeat that for our test environment. Now I got to bring in some real data and get it to our however many pre-prod environments we have. And then we got it in production, and then I ran out of space for DR, however many of those you have. So, and then, by the way, you have to make all those turns with like the worst vehicle known to man. And then the ITSM folks are like, don't worry, we're working on a V2. Yes, you do have to make all the same. We're not really changing the process, but we're going to make it a little bit shinier for you, give you a new vehicle. But what it misses is that there's a paradigm shift that's happened in how we deliver software, right? So now, if I say, well, forget a car, that road is pretty stupid. If I want to make it to the top, now we just have this cable car going from the bottom to the top with a repeatable process, same package going, same process, straight line. I don't need to answer the same questions I was asked before. And this is where it starts to get fun. So in the old paradigm, the change request was out of band. You always got to go, you're engineering, you got to go do something else, open the change request. The approval is typically broad and arbitrary. If those 70 people, for example, that have to approve it, I'd be surprised if 69 of them had no idea what they were pressing approve on. They're just hitting buttons, right? The window is coordinated and static. So it's usually like, well, this other team is making this change, so are you sure that that's going to be safe? And give me the static window. It doesn't rationalize if it's a 15-minute change. You're like, well, you better make it an hour or two just in case. And it's a unique and non-idempotent change, right? It's usually one-way street. The validation is always, well, it's in the ticket. Like, how are we going to make sure this works? And then the sense is, the more we do this, the more risk it's adding. So every change request that comes in is kind of met with hemming and hawing. Like, oh, no. Why do you guys, in that world, if you haven't been asked the question, why are you guys doing so much change? It's met with skepticism. In the new paradigm, change requests are event-driven, right? Whenever the change happens is when it gets thrown into the pipeline. The approvals are deterministic and automated, so we'd have in my last place I would say, if it's not in the pipeline, it's not real, right? Get your concern in the pipeline. I don't want to have side meetings, don't want to talk about people's fears. Get them in the pipeline, that's the only thing that matters. The window is encapsulated and dynamic. The window is the size that it takes to actually do the deployment and no more. And it's a uniform idempotent change. Do the same thing 20 times, right, in PCF, doesn't matter. And validation is automated in blue-green. Whatever it takes for you to be sure that it's a good deployment, get it in your blue-green steps. And in this world, frequency, the more deployments, it reduces risk. Shout out to the Accelerate book for providing the data there too. So product delivery lead time is our sort of golden KPI that we measure by. This was one of my experiences from time to commit to production was 38 minutes, and that didn't exactly make CAB happy with that. That is orders of magnitude different than the mandatory week wait time, and then if we're talking about how when you're in a foot in both, I don't know if it's the best idea, but then you just stop going to those CAB meetings. You're like, well, it's all in pipelines. We got a new way of doing things, and don't save me a seat. So undeployed code in this world, undeployed code is at best a depreciating asset. Every minute delay decreases the value, and increases the risk. I'll go ahead and just wait here. Just right here for a minute. Okay, we'll move on. Let's do some takeaways here. So we need to embrace the paradigm shift and not shoehorn PCF as a step forward optimization. It's a new path. So you'll frequently hear from ITSM world, they'll just view it as a different runtime. Like, well, it's just kind of like WebSphere++, right? So like, you can do all the same things. And it takes some effort to explain how it's not that. And everything around it has to be sort of reconsidered in light of the outcomes that we mentioned earlier. And be good DevOps practitioners and use systems thinking with the goal of continuous delivery into production as the framework through which you optimize. You'll find that the way you initially get something into production will hang out a lot longer than you think. It's something you want to consider that on day one and not like, oh, we'll always optimize. We'll get to a pipeline later. That state you'll be in for an uncomfortably long time, and you'll wonder, why did we not just factor this in from the beginning? So use that systems thinking, continuous delivery and prod right from the get-go. And we're beyond rejecting false dichotomies of speed and risk, right? So like we said before, the old paradigm, the thought was the higher the velocity, the more the risk. And now they are connected, but it's the total inverse of what we thought it was. And there's plenty of, and I think the security landscape has done a lot for app dev to prove that to be the case. And all the security people getting rowdy. All right, pipe down. Yeah, there's plenty of nightmare security stories that showed if you can't deliver it into production at a moment's notice, you've put your entire business at risk. So we need to relentlessly hunt down indeterminism. So whatever posture you're in now, if it's meeting time, if it's conversational, you can at least drive that out and say, okay, that has to become deterministic, get it in a test. Product delivery lead time. Minimize your depreciating assets. Undeployed code should kind of be, hot potato. Don't let that linger and feel comfortable with it. Champion convention rather than chastise over compliance. So that's more of a cultural takeaway from how you gain momentum around pipelines and continuous delivery. Let teams feel sort of blessed by the patterns instead of browbeaten over compliance. And the process should serve the outcome, not the other way around. I was having a good chat with somebody yesterday around why this seems so immovable, this process. So we're the humans, the robots have not won yet. Fingers crossed for that we can hold out for a little bit while longer. But we get to define the process. We get to say how we get things into production. So let's not be held captive by what we said 20 years ago. And outcomes are an alignment opportunity. Like we said, if we go back to the definition, there's a way you can get ITSM and continuous delivery folks in a room and say, I think we both want the same thing. We're just in a new world now. And yeah, to get a little warm in your ear here, as the 80s luminaries told us, in my mind and in my car, we can't rewind. We've gone too far. PCF killed the ITSM star. That's all. There's my connection stuff.